The library's silence was a lie, heavy with secrets that clung to the air like dust. I was 18, a senior at Lincoln High, and I thought I knew who I was until Mr. Callahan's shadow fell over me that October evening. His voice, low and unsteady, said my name like it was a question he wasn't sure he wanted answered. I'd always been invisible. Ethan Harper, the quiet kid with a sketchbook, dodging jocks and fading into the background of a small-town Ohio high school. My life was a tightrope walk, good grades, no trouble, and a secret I buried so deep it barely had a name. I was gay, but nobody knew, not my parents, not my best friend Mia, not even me, fully, until that year. It was safer that way. In a town where different was a dirty word, I kept my head down and my heart locked. Mr. Callahan was the opposite of invisible. At 35, he was the math teacher everyone either loved or feared, charismatic, sharp, with a smile that could disarm a room and eyes that saw too much. He was married, straight, untouchable, the kind of man who coached Little League on weekends and quoted Pythagoras like it was poetry. To me, he was a puzzle I didn't dare solve, even when I caught myself staring too long during his lectures, memorizing the way his hands moved over the chalkboard. That evening, I was alone in the library, buried in calculus notes. The place was a maze of old books and flickering lights, the kind of quiet that made your thoughts too loud. I didn't hear him approach until his shadow loomed over my table. "Ethan," he said, and my pencil froze mid-equation. His voice wasn't the usual confident cadence. I trembled, like he was standing on the edge of something dangerous. "Mr. Callahan." I looked up, heart kicking against my ribs. He stood too close, his broad frame blocking the aisle. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and his eyes, God, those eyes held something I couldn't name. Not anger, not kindness, but a storm of both. "You're here late," he said, but it wasn't a question. He sat across from me, uninvited, his chair scraping the floor. The library felt smaller, the air thinner. I should have packed my bag and left. I didn't. "I'm just studying," I mumbled, my voice betraying me. My sketchbook lay open beside my notes, a half-finished drawing of a boy's face, vague, but damning if anyone looked too closely. I slammed it shut, but not before his gaze flicked to it. He didn't mention the sketch. Instead, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said, "You're different, Ethan. You don't belong here." His words hit like a punch, sharp and confusing. Did he mean the library? The school? This town? My pulse raced as I tried to decode him, but his face gave nothing away, just that same intensity, like he was seeing me for the first time. "I don't know what you mean," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to run, but his presence pinned me there, heavy and inescapable. He reached out, his hand brushing mine as he slid my notebook closer. The touch was brief, electric. "Wrong. You're smarter than this place," he said, his voice dropping. "You're more." His fingers lingered on the edge of my notebook, inches from mine, and I swear the world tilted. I pulled my hand back, heat flooding my face. This was Mr. Callahan, teacher, married, straight. But the way he looked at me wasn't straight. It wasn't safe. It was a line crossed, a boundary shattered, and I didn't know if I was terrified or alive for the first time. "I should go," I said, shoving my books into my bag. My hands shook, but he didn't move, didn't stop me, just watched with that unbearable gaze. As I fled the library, the cold night air hit me like a slap, but it couldn't erase the heat of his touch or the weight of his words. That night, I lay awake, replaying every second. Was I imagining it? Misreading him? But the truth was clawing its way out of me. Raw and undeniable, Mr. Callahan had seen Miralai's scene, meaned it changed everything. I wasn't invisible anymore. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The next day, school felt like a minefield. Every hallway, every glance, carried the weight of what happened. I avoided the math wing, skipped lunch to hide in the art room. But Mia noticed. "You're acting weird," she said, tossing her braid over her shoulder. Mia was my anchor 17. Fierce, with a laugh that could cut through any gloom. She didn't know about me, but she knew when I was off. Just stressed. I lied, sketching furiously to avoid her eyes. She didn't push, but I felt her watching me, like she could sense the storm brewing inside. In calculus, I kept my head down, but Mr. Callahan's voice pulled me in. He was back to his usual self-polished, professional, explaining derivatives like nothing had happened. But when he handed back my homework, his fingers grazed mine again. Deliberate. My breath caught, and I looked up to find his eyes locked on me. Just for a second, before he moved on. It wasn't nothing. It was everything. And I was drowning in it. Days bled into weeks, and the library moment haunted me like a ghost. I couldn't shake Mr. Callahan's words, "You're more," or the way his touch lingered in my mind. A spark I both craved and feared. I was a kid caught in a current, pulled towards something I didn't understand but couldn't resist. School became a battlefield of avoidance and obsession. I'd take the long way to classes, dodging the math wing, but my eyes betrayed me, searching for him in every crowded hallway. When I did see him, my chest tightened. He was always the same, confident, untouchable, joking with other teachers or calling out answers in class. But now, I noticed the cracks, how his smile faltered when he thought no one was watching, how his gaze lingered on me just a beat too long. I told myself it was nothing. A fluke. A mistake. He was married. For God's sake. I'd seen Mrs. Callahan once, at a school fundraiser, blonde, poised, the kind of woman who belonged on a Christmas card. But the more I tried to bury it, the more it clawed back. My sketchbook filled with fragments of him, his hands, his jawline, the curve of his brow. I hid the pages like contraband, terrified someone would see. One afternoon, Mia cornered me in the cafeteria. "Okay, spill," she said, slamming her tray down. "You've been a zombie for weeks." Her brown eyes narrowed, sharp with concern. I wanted to tell her God. I wanted to, but the words stuck in my throat. "How do you say? I think my teacher crossed a line, and I don't know if I'm scared or in love." Instead, I shrugged. "Just college apps. Stress." She didn't buy it, but she let it go, launching into a story about her latest crush. I nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying that library moment like a broken record. The breaking point came during a late study session. Mr. Callahan had started offering extra help after school, and I'd been avoiding it like the plague. But my grades were slipping, ironic, since math used to be my escape. I had no choice. I showed up to his classroom, heart pounding, telling myself I'd keep it professional. He was alone, grading papers, the room bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon. "Ethan," he said, looking up, and there it was again, that tone, like my name was a secret. I sat at a desk near the front, clutching my textbook like a shield. We worked through derivatives. His voice steady, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. He moved to my desk to check my work, leaning over my shoulder. Too close. His breath brushed my ear, and I froze, my pencil digging into the paper. "You're distracted," he said softly, not moving away. I could smell his cologne woodsy. Sharp. My mouth went dry. I'm fine. I lied, staring at the numbers that no longer made sense. He didn't move, his hand resting on the back of my chair, fingers brushing the fabric of my hoodie. It was subtle, deniable, but it set my skin on fire. Ethan, he said again, quieter, like a confession. I looked up, and his face was inches from mine, his eyes searching, conflicted. You don't have to hide who you are. The words hit like a tidal wave. Hide. Did he know? My heart raced, panic and hope colliding. I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand answers, but the door creaked open. A janitor, oblivious, pushing a cart. Mr. Callahan straightened, his mask slipping back into place, and I was left gasping for air. I bolted, mumbling an excuse, my bag half-zipped as I fled to the parking lot. The cold October air stung my lungs, but it couldn't cool the chaos inside me. He knew. He saw me. And that terrified me as much as it thrilled me. At home, I locked myself in my room, ignoring my mom's calls for dinner. My sketchbook spilled open, and there he was again, his face. My shame. In every line. I tore the page out, crumpling it, but I couldn't throw it away. It felt like throwing away a piece of myself. The next day, I skipped calculus. I couldn't face him. Not yet. But avoidance only made it worse. By Friday, Mia was done with my excuses. You're coming to the game tonight, she said, dragging me to the football field. The stands were packed, the air thick with cheers and fried food. I scanned the crowd, half expecting to see him, but he wasn't there. Until he was. He appeared at halftime, standing by the bleachers, his coat collar up against the wind. Our eyes met across the crowd, and for a moment, the world stopped. He didn't approach, didn't smile, just watched me with that same intensity. I turned away, my heart hammering, but I felt his gaze like a weight I couldn't shake. That night, I dreamed of the library, his hand on mine, his voice saying my name. I woke up sweating, the truth clawing at me. I wasn't just scared of him. I wanted him. And that was a line I didn't know how to cross. The dream clung to me like damp clothes. And by Monday, I was a wreck. I couldn't keep dodging Mr. Callahan. Not when his class was unavoidable and his presence was a magnet pulling me apart. I was 18, teetering on the edge of something I couldn't name: love, obsession, or just a desperate need to be seen. I went to calculus, sitting in the back, hoping to disappear. But his eyes found me, steady and unyielding, as he lectured on integrals. When he called on me, my voice cracked, and the class snickered. I wanted to sink through the floor, but his gaze held me up, like he was daring me to stay. After class, he asked me to stay behind. My stomach dropped, but I nodded, waiting as the room emptied. He closed the door softly, deliberately, and leaned against his desk. You've been avoiding me, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. He stepped closer, his voice low. I meant what I said. Ethan, you don't have to hide. His words were a knife, cutting through the walls I'd built. I wanted to scream that he didn't get to say that. Not when he was the one crossing lines he had no right to cross. Do you know? I blurted, my voice shaking. About me. It was the closest I'd come to saying it out loud, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. His face softened, and for a moment, he wasn't Mr. Callahan, the teacher, but just a man, raw and unguarded. I see you, he said. I've always seen you. The room spun. I wanted to run, to hide, but I also wanted to stay, to let his words sink in. He didn't touch me, didn't move closer, but the space between us crackled with something dangerous. "You're not alone," he added, and I swear I heard his voice break. I left without a word, my head a mess of fear and longing. For the rest of the week, I was a ghost, drifting through classes, avoiding Mia's questions. But Mr. Callahan didn't let up. He'd find excuses to talk to May about homework, college plans, anything, but his words always carried a deeper current, like he was reaching for something neither of us could name. One evening, I stayed late in the art room, losing myself in a canvas. Painting was my escape, where I could spill the chaos inside me without words. I didn't hear the door until it clicked shut. Mr. Callahan stood there, holding a stack of papers, his tie gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "Ethan," he said, and my brush froze. "I didn't mean to scare you." "Then why are you here?" My voice was sharper than I meant, but I was tired of running. He set the papers down, stepping closer. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung in the air, heavy and wrong. He was my teacher. He was married. But the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered made my resolve crumble. "I'm not. I can't," I stammered, backing up until I hit the wall. He followed, stopping just short of touching me. His eyes were a storm, full of guilt and need. "You don't have to say anything," he said, "but I know you feel it too." He was right. I did. And that was the worst part. I wanted to hate him, to push him away, but my body betrayed me, leaning toward him like a moth to a flame. He reached out, his hand hovering near my cheek, and I closed my eyes, waiting for the world to end. It didn't. The bell rang, shrill and jarring, and he stepped back. The moment shattered. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and then he was gone, leaving me alone with my pounding heart and a canvas streaked with red. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mia, not my parents, not even my journal. But the secret grew, heavy and alive, eating away at me. I started seeing him everywhere, in the hallways, in my dreams, in the lines of my sketches. I was falling, and there was no one to catch me. By November, the tension was unbearable. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. Mia noticed, dragging me to a coffee shop after school. "You're scaring me," she said, her voice soft but firm. "What's going on?" I wanted to tell her. I almost did. But the words felt too big, too dangerous. Instead, I smiled, lied, and said I was fine. She didn't believe me, but she hugged me anyway. And for a moment, I felt safe. But safety was an illusion. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the library. 7 p.m. Please." I knew it was him. I should have deleted it, blocked the number, told someone. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and went. The library was a tomb at 7 p.m., its silence louder than ever. I stood outside, the November chill biting through my hoodie, my breath fogging in the air. I could have turned back, but my feet moved forward, drawn by a force I couldn't fight. Inside, Mr. Callahan waited in the same aisle where it all began. He looked different, disheveled, his eyes tired but burning with something desperate. "Ethan," he said, stepping toward me. I held up a hand, stopping him. "Why?" I demanded, my voice raw. "Why are you doing this?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've tried to stop. I've tried to be who I'm supposed to be. But you," he stopped, his voice cracking. "You make me question everything." His words were a mirror, reflecting my own confusion. I was just a kid, figuring myself out. And he was a man with a life wife. Job. Stability. Yet here we were, standing on the edge of something that could ruin us both. I'm your student, I said, the words tasting bitter. This is wrong. I know, he whispered, but he didn't back away. Instead, he stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. It was gentle, tentative, but it set my nerves alight. But it doesn't feel wrong. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I didn't. I let his hand linger, let the moment stretch until it was unbearable. Then I pulled away, my heart pounding. I can't do this, I said, and this time, I meant it. I left him standing there, his silhouette etched into my mind as I stumbled into the night. The next week was torture. I avoided him, skipped his class, buried myself in art and lies. But the secret was a weight I couldn't carry alone. I told Mia not everything, but enough. There's someone, I said, staring at my coffee. Someone I shouldn't want. Her eyes widened, but she didn't judge. Is it serious? She asked, her voice careful. I don't know, I admitted. It's complicated. I couldn't tell her it was Mr. Callahan. The shame was too heavy, the risk too great. But saying it out loud, even vaguely, made it real. Mia hugged me, fierce and warm. You're not alone. Okay. Whoever it is, you deserve better than complicated. Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't pull me out of the mess I was in. At school, Mr. Callahan kept his distance, but his eyes followed me. I felt them in the halls, in the cafeteria, in the moments I least expected. It was a silent conversation, one I didn't know how to end. I started researching college applications, scholarships, anything to get out of this town, away from him, away from the version of me that wanted him. One night, I found a letter slipped into my locker. No signature, just his handwriting. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. But I can't stop feeling this. I tore it up, but the words stayed, branded in my mind. By December, the tension was a live wire. I couldn't avoid him forever. Finals were coming, and I needed his class to graduate. I showed up to a study session, bracing myself. He was professional, distant, but when the others left, he lingered. Ethan, he said, his voice low. Can we talk? I nodded, against my better judgment. We ended up in his office, the door half open, a pretense of propriety. He didn't touch me, didn't cross the line, but his words did. I'm leaving, he said. After this semester. I can't stay here. Not like this. My heart stopped. Why? I asked, though I knew. Because of you, he said, his voice breaking. Because I'm not strong enough to stay away. I wanted to scream that it wasn't my fault, that he'd started this, but I couldn't. Because part of me wanted him to stay, wanted him to choose me, even if it was impossible. Instead, I said, good. You should go. He flinched, but nodded. You're right. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in his office, surrounded by his books and his scent and the ghost of what could have been. I walked home in the snow, my heart a tangle of relief and loss. I'd survived, but at what cost? The truth was out, and I couldn't put it back. I was gay, and I was in love with a man I couldn't have be a man who'd seen me when no one else did, but who'd also broken something inside me. Winter break came like a reprieve, but it couldn't erase him. Mr. Callahan's confession and leaving echoed in my head, a wound that wouldn't close. I spent Christmas in a haze, faking smiles for my family while my mind replayed every moment, every touch, every word. Back at school, January was brutal. The halls felt emptier without his presence, even though he was still there, teaching, grading, existing. I avoided his gaze, but it didn't matter. His absence was already carving a hole in me. I threw myself into art, painting canvases of storms and shadows, trying to purge him from my system. It didn't work. Mia noticed. Of course. "You're not okay," she said one afternoon, cornering me in the art room. "Is it that guy?" I nodded, unable to lie anymore. She didn't push for details, just sat with me, her presence a quiet anchor. "You don't have to go through this alone," she said. I wanted to believe her, but the shame was a wall between us. I started seeing a counselor not school-affiliated. Thank God. My parents thought it was about college stress, and I let them. The counselor, Ms. Rivera, was kind, patient, and didn't flinch when I finally said the word, gay. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and it felt like shedding a skin. But when she asked about relationships, I clammed up. How could I explain Mr. Callahan without destroying everything? In class, he was a ghost of himself, professional, distant, but his eyes still found me. I hated how much I wanted that, how much I missed the danger of his attention. One day, he handed back a test, his fingers brushing mine. It was an accident. Maybe, but it burned. I pulled away, my heart racing, and he looked like he'd been slapped. I started researching more than colleges' support groups, online forums, stories of kids like me. I wasn't alone, but that didn't make it easier. Every post about forbidden love, every warning about power imbalances, felt like a mirror held up to my life. I knew Mr. Callahan was wrong, but my heart didn't care. By February, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to his office after school, my resolve shaky but firm. He was packing books, his desk half empty. "Ethan," he said, startled, standing up. "What are you doing here?" "I need to know," I said, my voice steady for once. "Why me? Why did you do this?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I saw you, really saw you, and I couldn't look away. You're extraordinary." His words were a knife, twisting in my chest. "You're my teacher," I said. "You were supposed to help me." "Not." I couldn't finish. The hurt was too raw. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I never should have let it go this far." "Then why did you?" I was shouting now, tears burning my eyes. "You knew it was wrong. You knew it would ruin me." He stepped closer, then stopped himself. "Because I'm selfish," he admitted. "Because for the first time in my life, I felt alive." I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. I saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of his own choices. He was as lost as I was, but that didn't make it okay. "Stay away from me," I said, and I meant it. I walked out, leaving him standing there, surrounded by half-packed boxes and regrets. That night, I told Mia everything. Not his name, not yet, but the truth. I was gay, and I'd fallen for someone I couldn't have. She listened, her eyes wide, then pulled me into a hug. "You're enough," she said. "Just as you are." It was the first time I believed it. I started coming out, slowly, to my counselor, to an online group, to myself. Each time, it got easier, like a weight lifting. But Mr. Callahan's shadow lingered, a reminder of the line we'd crossed and the cost of it. By March, he was gone. No announcement, no goodbye, just a substitute teacher and whispers in the halls. I heard he'd taken a job in another state. I didn't know if it was true, but it didn't matter. He was out of my life, but the scars remained. I painted more, wrote more, lived more. I wasn't okay. Not yet. But I was starting to be. The truth was messy, painful, but it was mine. And that was enough for now. Spring came, but it didn't feel like renewal. Mr. Callahan's absence was a void, not a relief. I told him to stay away, but I hadn't expected it to hurt this much. I was 18, still figuring out who I was, and the hole he'd left was a reminder of how deeply he'd gotten under my skin. School was a strange new world. The substitute, Ms. Patel, was kind but clueless about the undercurrents in our class. Kids whispered about Mr. Callahan's sudden exit. Some said he'd been fired, others that he'd just quit. I stayed silent, my secret burning a hole in my chest. I focused on finals, college applications, anything to keep moving forward. Mia was my rock. After I came out to her, she didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She started dragging me to local LGBTQ plus meetups, small gatherings in a community center downtown. The first time, I sat in the back, arms crossed, feeling like an imposter. But the story soft love, loss, survival echoed mine. I wasn't alone, and that realization was a lifeline. I started opening up in therapy, too. Ms. Rivera didn't push, but she asked the right questions. What do you want, Ethan? She'd say, and I'd fumble for answers. I wanted to be free, to be me, but I didn't know what that looked like yet. I told her about Mr. Callahan, not his name, but the weight of what happened. She listened, her face calm but serious. That was a violation, she said, not unkindly. You're allowed to be angry. Angry. I hadn't let myself feel it. Not fully. But once she said it, the anger came, hot and sharp. He'd seen me. Yes. But he'd also used me. Crossed a line that wasn't mine to cross. I started painting it out, canvases of jagged lines and dark reds. Raw and unapologetic. Art became my voice when words failed. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox, not his handwriting, but from the school. It was a formal notice. Mr. Callahan had resigned due to personal reasons. Attached was a note from the principal, encouraging students to speak to counselors if they felt affected. My stomach churned. Did they know? Had he said something? I burned the letter, but the questions lingered. I threw myself into my future. I got accepted to an art school in Chicago, a scholarship covering most of the tuition. It was a chance to start over, to be Ethan Harper, not the kid with a secret. But even as I planned my escape, the past clung to me. I'd see his face in crowds, hear his voice in quiet moments. I hated how much I still cared. One night, at a meetup, I met Jay. He was 19, a college freshman with a crooked smile and a story not unlike mine. We talked for hours. About art. About coming out. About the messiness of being young and queer in a world that didn't always make space for it. He didn't know about Mr. Callahan, but he knew pain, and that was enough. When he kissed me under a streetlight, it was soft, simple, right. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was a start. Graduation loomed, and with it, a sense of closure. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, Mia cheering louder than anyone. My parents beamed, oblivious to the war I'd fought inside. I was proud, but I was also tired of carrying a secret, tired of being defined by it. The night before I left for Chicago, I went back to the library. It was empty, the air thick with memories. I stood in the aisle where it all began, tracing the spot where his hand had brushed mine. I didn't miss him. Not exactly. But I missed the version of me who didn't know how much this would hurt. I left to sketch their boy, alone, staring at the stars. It wasn't him. Wasn't me. Just a piece of the story I was ready to let go. I walked out, the door closing behind me. And for the first time in months, I felt light. Chicago was waiting. A new city, a new life, a chance to be the Ethan I was meant to be. I wasn't healed. Not completely, but I was ready to try. Chicago hit me like a tidal wave, bright, loud, alive. Art school was a whirlwind of color and chaos. A world where I could be myself without apology. My dorm was small. My roommate loud. But for the first time, I felt like I belonged. I was 18, gay, and free. But Mr. Callahan's shadow still lingered. A bruise that hadn't faded. Classes were intense painting, figure drawing, art history, but they were my salvation. I poured myself into every brushstroke, every critique, trying to paint over the past. My professors saw something in me, called my work raw and honest. I didn't tell them it was born from pain. Jay became a constant. We weren't dating, not officially, but we spent late nights in coffee shops, talking about everything and nothing. He was out, unapologetic, with a laugh that made my chest ache. When he held my hand, it was different from Mr. Callahan's touch, open, equal, safe. But I still flinched sometimes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. One night, over cheap pizza, I told Jay about him, not his name, but the story. My teacher, I said, staring at my plate. He saw me, but it was wrong. He crossed a line. Jay listened, his face unreadable, then reached for my hand. That wasn't your fault, he said, his voice firm. He was the adult. He should have known better. It was what Ms. Rivera had said, what I knew in my head, but hearing it from Jay made it real. I cried, right there in the diner, and he didn't look away. I started writing letters I'd never sent, angry ones, sad ones, ones where I forgave him. I burned them in a park, watching the ashes scatter. It wasn't closure, not fully, but it was something. I was learning to let go, to reclaim myself from the mess he'd left. Back in Ohio, Mia kept me grounded. We video called weekly, her face lighting up my screen as she rambled about college and crushes. I told her I was gay, fully, no half-truths, and she just grinned. Took you long enough, she said, and I laughed, the sound freer than it had been in months. One day, I got an email from an unknown address. My heart stopped, thinking it was him, but it was from a former classmate. She'd heard rumors, wanted to know if they were true. Did something happen with Mr. Callahan? She asked. I deleted it, my hand shaking. The past wasn't done with me yet. I threw myself into a new project, a series of paintings about identity, about the lines we cross and the ones we don't. My professor called it brave, but I felt exposed, like I was laying my soul bare. At the spring showcase, my work hung alongside others, and Jay stood beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. You're incredible, he whispered, and I believed him. But the past came knocking again. A news article, buried in my hometown paper's archives. Local teacher resigns amid allegations of inappropriate conduct. Not his name, not mine, but I knew. My stomach churned, guilt and relief warring inside me. Had someone else spoken up? Had I dodged a bullet, or failed to fire one? I called Ms. Rivera, spilling everything, his name, the library, the letters. She was calm, professional, but her voice was steel. You did nothing wrong, she said. But if you're ready, you can report it. It might help others. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But the idea planted a seed. That night, I painted until dawn a canvas of a boy breaking free from chains. Stars above him. It was me. It was him. It was us. I didn't hate Mr. Callahan anymore. I pitied him, trapped in his own choices. But I was done carrying his weight. Jay kissed me under the Chicago skyline, and I let myself feel Ethiop. Possibility. Love. I wasn't fixed, but I was healing. The boy in the library was still part of me, but he wasn't all of me. I was more, just like he'd said, but not in the way he meant. Summer in Chicago was a revelation warm, vibrant, a city pulsing with life. I was 19 now, a year out from the library, and I was starting to feel like myself again. Not whole, not yet, but closer. Art school. Jay. My new friends, they were pieces of a puzzle I was finally putting together. I kept painting, my work growing bolder. My latest series was about transformation canvases of storms giving way to light, of boys becoming men. At a gallery show, a critic called my work hauntingly human, and I felt a spark of pride. I was telling my story, not his, and it mattered. Jay and I were official now. He was patient, letting me set the pace. And when we kissed, it was a choice, not a secret. We spent weekends exploring the city museums, street fairs, quiet moments by Lake Michigan. He didn't erase Mr. Callahan's mark, but he helped me see beyond it. Love, I learned, wasn't about possession or power. It was about freedom. Back home, I visited for a week. Mia met me at the airport, her hug fierce as ever. We drove through our old town, past Lincoln High, and I felt a pang, but no panic. The library was just a building now, not a cage. I told my parents I was gay, sitting at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. My mom cried. My dad was quiet, but they hugged me. We love you, they said, and it was enough. The news article haunted me, though. I'd avoided it for months. But MS. Rivera's words echoed, it might help others. I started researching, digging into what happened after Mr. Callahan left. The rumors were vague. Another student, maybe, had come forward. No charges, no names, but the truth was out there, waiting. I made a choice. I contacted the school board, anonymously at first, sharing my story without naming myself. It was terrifying, but it was also a release. I didn't know if it would change anything, but it wasn't about him, Anna Marie, it was about me, about taking back my power. Months later, I got a letter from the school. They'd investigated, quietly, and Mr. Callahan was barred from teaching in the district. No details, no public scandal, but it was enough. I burned the letter, not out of anger, but because I was done carrying it. At my second-year showcase, I unveiled a new painting, a boy standing in a storm, his face lit by stars. It was called Survivor, and it was for me, for the kid in the library who thought he'd never make it out. Jay stood beside me, his hand in mine, and I felt whole. Years later, I'd think of Mr. Callahan not with anger, but with a strange gratitude. He'd seen me when I was invisible, even if it was wrong. He'd push me to face myself, to claim my truth, even if it cost us both. I didn't forgive him, not fully, but I understood him, a man trapped by his own heart, just as I'd been. I was 25 when I saw him again, by chance, at a coffee shop in New York. He was older, grayer, alone. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the library was there between us. He nodded, a small gesture, and I nodded back. No words, no apologies, just acknowledgement. Then I turned away, back to my life, me art, my love, my truth. I was Ethan Harper, gay, artist, survivor. I'd crossed lines, fallen, and risen. The library was a chapter, not the whole story. And as I walked into the city, Jay's hand in mine, I knew I was finally free.